Hey, welcome to the Pittsburgh City Paper Podcast. Today I'm joined by Wayno. How you doing, Wayno?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Wayno is going to be contributing comics to the weekly City Paper issue. Start with his syndicated, you want to call it that?
Sure.
Yeah. Syndicated comic, Wayno Vision. I guess to start, do you want to just describe your style and your perspective for people who maybe haven't seen it yet?
Sure. So I don't have any continuing characters or anything like that. So each panel is a standalone. It's like a 45. If you're thinking of music.
Yeah.
I think my style is kind of low key and absurdist, maybe. I don't use a lot of exclamation points or like people yelling or jumping around or making funny faces. It's usually sort of like a moment where there's something odd, like a normal person in an odd situation, or just some anomaly that then is resolved by the reader. Like I said, it's kind of, I consider it to be kind of a low-key humor. I mean, I worked with Dan Peraro on his comic Bizarro for a long time, and we have very similar sensibilities, so I kind of don't like, unless it's making a point, like goofy-looking characters.
Yeah. And I was going through, you can find Wayno's comics at gocomics.com/WaynoVision. I was going through those earlier today. And what I like about it is obviously we're a newspaper, so there's a journalistic aspect to this, but it's sort of relevant without being timely. Is that a fair statement?
I think so, yeah. I try not to be too political or, although sometimes, the personal is political. And sometimes you just can't resist. Like, everybody has to do a Trump gag sooner or later.
So how did this come together? How did you how did you come to join CP in this way?
I'd worked with Lisa Cunningham, the art director, in the past quite a bit, and she just kind of was championing me in-house, I think. When they were deciding on some new features, she told me that she had been kind of hoping to shepherd this for some time, so it's all thanks to Lisa, really.
Oh, cool. So to go back before what you were saying about these single panel things, at any point in your career, have you done multiple panel series?
I did. A long time ago, I did some comic books, like independent comics, where I had recurring characters, and I once did a syndication package, of samples with the same characters, and that kind of gives you an advantage in some way, but I really like these standalone things. Again, music is really a big part of my consciousness, and so I kind of think of have spoken with other cartoonists, and I kind of think of the single panels as like a punk rock single. It's in and out. It's like a 2-minute song. So, and I get to, I'm not like locked into anything I could get sick of.
Right. Do you listen to music when you draw?
I do. When I'm writing, I'm usually in a quiet room, or I'm just listening to like maybe ambient music or quiet music. But when I'm drawing, I listen to all sorts of music.
Any favorites?
Oh my gosh. I like a lot of jazz. I like punk rock. Anything. I'm always curious about things. I'm really big on like 60s Italian soundtracks.
Oh, cool.
So I kind of have this weird collection of Ennio Morricone and all of his compatriots.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's the only one I know. So
that's what I know. Yeah, that's the big one. Sure.
Do you remember the first comic you ever drew?
I do, in fact. I think I was in second or third grade, and we made a newspaper. There was just one copy. It was a completely handmade newspaper.
Limited edition.
Right, very limited.
Okay.
And I did some gag that I stole from a cartoon I'd seen on TV. I think there was a guy fishing, and like the fish put a note on the hook or something like that. it's long gone, I think. Fortunately, my plagiarism days. Yeah.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your career, how you came to do this professionally?
Sure. I always wanted to draw, and I always drew since I was a little kid. And I kind of got into a pre-internet network kind of grew out of a mail art movement of mini comics. So there was people all over the world doing these small Xeroxed 8-page comics and trading them through the mail. So it was a really free and unstructured kind of training ground. And from that, I started getting published in, there were a lot of black and white anthology comics in the early 90s, Fantagraphics, Kitchen Sink, other publishers started doing those. It's kind of a weird route. I was published in these alt, sort of post-underground comics, I started getting calls from art directors for illustration work, which I found that I liked quite a bit. And then just one thing led to another, but I've always been interested in the form as cartooning. So even my illustration work is cartoon work. It's not purely representational. And the people at Universal Go Comics about a year and a half ago, or maybe a little longer, asked me if I would be interested in joining their site. And the title is kind of their fault. They suggested that since my name is sort of a brand, that I include that in the title somehow. So that's what we came up with, Wayno.
So that's not a long time. You haven't had that for a very long time.
The title?
Yeah.
No, but I've had the name for a long time.
So we were talking a little bit before about the role the internet plays. Obviously, you can see your comics at gocomics.com/WaynoVision.
Right.
We're a newspaper. We have a physical paper, but obviously we also have a website. Do you think that the internet is? I'm sure it's good and bad for comics culture. Do you think it's more one or the other?
I think it's better. It's more good than bad.
Okay.
I mean, you certainly can reach. It's the point of entry is available to everyone, you know.
Right.
And so if you put your comics online, anyone all over the world can see them. On the other hand, that has probably contributed to the, if not the demise, the culling of print. Weeklies but I don't think print's ever going to go away. And I like to be in both. I think that I'm reaching a different audience, casual readers. Everybody, people pick up the city paper or weeklies from the boxes, and they're not specifically looking for the comic.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to just infiltrate.
Is Pittsburgh a good place to be a cartoonist?
It is. It is. It's a good place to be any type of an artist. We have, we have a pretty reasonable cost of living. We have a great arts community here.
Yeah.
And within that, a pretty active and vital cartoonist community. We have a group that gets together for lunch once a month, because normally we just work by ourselves.
Right.
So we can talk to each other and see what we're doing. And we have a mailing list of almost 100 people in the area that are specifically in the cartooning world.
Do you ever write or draw about Pittsburgh? I didn't see any, but...
Not so much in my comic, but I have in the past, here and there. I did a little one-page comic once for a guide to the North Side. It was a little capsule biography, I guess, of the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly part of, who I am. But I look at my comics as specifically Wayno Vision as not confined to a region.
Right. So week after week, are you going to be writing these new every week? Are you pulling from like a collection that you already have finished? Is there going to be a mix?
I'm working every week on new comics. Right now I'm about 2 or 3 months ahead.
Awesome.
So I'm trying to maintain that.
Yeah.
So I'm doing, online there's 2 per week. So I'm each week I'm picking the best one for the city paper,
Yeah.
or my favorite of the two, for the print version. So, and that, the difference, print is, getting back to that question, print is is very ephemeral. And so if people are interested, then they can go see everything online and just, scroll back through the whole history.
Right.
So I think they complement each other.
So you mean 3 months ahead? That's pretty good. Is that you just got started? How long does it take to do one comic?
I mean, the physical labor of the drawing and scanning and coloring can be, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours each. But the writing is kind of constant. I've done a lot of writing about writing comics, because I want to try to demystify this idea that you just kind of sit down and it's all done. And I spend, and everybody I know who's a cartoonist spends a lot of time writing, like any other type of writing, editing, changing. I keep a sketchbook with me pretty much all the time.
Yeah, do you have it? Yeah,
I do, yeah. So, yeah, there's,
oh, wow.
I keep, so here's some things I'll show you. Some ideas that when I get back to my studio today, I'll be drawing, but I'll start, I may draw things 10 or 12 times before I actually start drawing it for a publication. And I'm kind of obsessive about editing, so a lot of times even after the work is uploaded, I'll go back and I could delete a couple of words here. So.
Well, yeah, I guess on the word part, obviously it's a function of, economic. You have to be as efficient as possible. So I guess, is that what you're talking about? Just taking out words, making it shorter?
Partially, yeah. I think that brevity is usually better, unless that's the point.
Yeah.
Unless the gag is about being very wordy.
Yeah.
But so I'm very happy when I come up with a purely visual gag that has no words at all.
All right, so I mentioned to you before, I want to talk about some of your comics, but it doesn't translate very well to radio.
We can do it. Let's see how it works.
All right, do you want to describe the one that is your debut in City Paper?
Sure.
Today.
So the caption up at the top, it says London 1967. And it's the members of this band that I think still exists, called Status Quo. And they're all kind of standing around in their frilly mod gear, and the organist is asking the other members, they're looking at the drum head that says Status Quo, and he says, do you think the name really captures a rebellious rock and roll spirit? So it's just kind of a little joke on their name.
Yeah.
But again, I did a lot of photo research for this for this comic, so those actually kind of look like the real guys, and the instruments are cartoon historically accurate.
Okay.
And that's what their drum head looked like. But that's kind of a joke that I think probably a few years ago I just kind of made a tweet and said, the least rebellious rock and roll band name was Status Quo. So
do you tweet a lot?
I do.
Yeah, because it seems like a healthy thing for somebody in cartoons to do, to
right,
have quick, funny thoughts.
Right, and I also use it to kind of trick myself into working too. So almost every week I'll be working on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 cartoons, and I'll put a tweet up that says on the drawing board today, and I will describe, without giving away anything, kind of like what I'm drawing, so it'll say gangsters, a lizard, a rock band, and that kind of makes me finish them, because I've publicized that they exist, so it kind of makes me keep working rather than giving up on a gag. So when you're self-employed, you have to trick yourself all the time.
Yeah.
Give yourself deadlines so you can finish things.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much for being here, Wayno.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be in print, in paper boxes and coffee shops all over Pittsburgh now.
Awesome.
Thank you.